Okay, I think I figured out why there's so many humans that are like, well, you have to use the code in order to do anything. Because I noticed this when I was trying to get hired at places that no place would hire me because I didn't speak the code or I didn't do it well enough or something like that. And I suspect that people can't date each other, people can't be friends with each other, people can't develop close relationships with their family, they can't, like, there's so many of these barriers because of this code. Well, the irony is there isn't just one code, it's a code for every person, and they change all the time because my code has changed tremendously since I first started with the SAMs. And I've never heard of that either. I've never heard of anybody referencing that the code changes over time. Or that it changes between people. And that's what's so fucking weird to me, is that apparently humans are running around and they think that if anybody else's code conflicts with their own, that the other person must be wrong and just doesn't know anything about what's going on and automatically dismisses them. And it's like, that's insane. That's completely fucking insane. These the codes that we use are going to depend upon what we currently believe, or at least what the SAMs believe that we believe. So if I start becoming a Muslim, then every time that there's a 12 or some kind of a reference to God, then it's going to reflect Allah instead of Yahweh or Jehovah or whatever you want to call it. So, or and I could even believe in Zeus, and it would do that instead of it being a monotheistic persuasion about religion. Maybe I'm a polytheist, and I start hearing coded language about that, about polytheism. So what happens, I think, is that when two people whose codes, which means that their reference frame, their cognitive script, their worldview, their paradigm, conflict, then one of them thinks that the other one is evil or stupid or crazy. And these are the three things that people categorize each other as, is if there's some kind of a conflict, if there's some kind of a contradiction, then the other person, it's always the other person is stupid, crazy, or evil every single time. If Bob and Joe get into an argument and it doesn't get resolved, then Bob will just think that Joe is either stupid, crazy, or evil every single fucking time, and Joe will think the same thing about Bob. Well, they can't both be right. They can't. Well, I guess they could. Maybe they're both evil, or maybe they're both stupid, or maybe they're both crazy. But not after 1,000 times. Not after 1,000 people. They can't all be stupid and crazy and evil. They can't always be stupid and crazy and evil. And it's just ironic to me that what humans have done with this code is they've imprisoned themselves and each other into these paradigmatic expectations that the world works like this. Only they've never done any investigation to find out how the world actually works. They don't understand the measuring tools that they're using, or they're smuggling them in. And I know that because as a philosopher, I can tell you, because this is my forte, everybody smuggles in some assumptions. No one is aware of every single assumption that they make. Some people assume that words are the things that they're referencing. Some people assume that gravity is a law, not a theory. Some people assume that everyone around them is a fucking idiot. Some people assume that women are temptresses and not to be trusted. Some people assume that men are stupid and obnoxious and the only thing that they care about is sex and violence. There's all of these kinds of assumptions. And the annoyance of it for me and them, even though they aren't aware of it, is that most of the time their paradigms are so small that they literally only occupy those assertions that they make, and that's it. And this is what I was getting at as far as like one of my pet peeves is a theory where every single part of it is just asserted, where there's no logically deductive or logically valid reason that you can use to derive one point of the theory from another. That every single point in it is just another assertion. And imagine there's paradigms out there that consist solely of those, where it's only assertions and that's it. And not only that, but the person that has these assertions are not even aware of what those assertions are, that they're even assertions to begin with, or how they ever got them. And so to them, this is just self-evident. This is just the way that the world is. And they've never seen it any other way. And they have no idea that there could be another paradigm that could be equally valid or more valid than their own. And it's bizarre to me that people can live their entire lives without ever realizing that there's another way of looking at the world than the way that they currently do. And that there's a reason that they came to the conclusions that they currently have. And that there's a series of assertions that they have made that have no basis in reality and no justification, including myself. Everyone does, like I said. So do the Sams. Every person in existence assumes something, at least one thing, to be true, and they don't know that that thing is true. They just believe it. And then they base everything either off of that, or they just do it again and they make another assertion about everything that exists that they're aware of. And sometimes that means not being aware of almost anything, and sometimes that means making an assumption on the fly that you don't even understand why you made it. But people get so caught up with each other, and they get into these conflicts, and they get into these relationships, and they get knee deep into the mud, and they never realize that they're actually in the mud. They don't realize that there's like dry land that you can actually walk on top of and just run and jump and skip and all that stuff. They're just stuck in the mud forever, and they don't realize there's anything else. And I think the reason that they don't understand that there's anything else is because emotionally they're not really incentivized to do that. And the emotions are what drive us. Ultimately, everyone is driven by emotions. Ultimately, everything that we think, say, and do is driven by some emotion or a series of emotions. Even our logical, deductive reasoning is driven by emotions, because why are we doing these deductions? How are we doing these deductions? What is the value of these deductions? Should I prioritize these deductions over some other deductions? Which deductions do I do first, and which do I do last, or not at all? Everything that we think, say, and do is fueled by and driven by and directed by our emotions. So most of the time, most people are not emotionally incentivized to criticize their own belief structure and to try to find some other belief structure. It's comfortable to sit where they already are. They don't have to question anything. And the number one thing I think that it is that when you assume that you're already right, then you don't have to expend any energy on trying to wonder about every single thing that exists in your life. It simplifies everything to just assume that you're already right. And this usually happens with religions, but it can also happen with just any paradigm, even if it's objective materialism. To dismiss everything else around you really narrows it down. You don't have to expend nearly as much energy when you assume that you're already right, because you've got your ruler, you've got your measuring stick, and then you just apply that to everything, versus having a different measuring stick for every single thing that you measure, or changing your measuring stick every single day or multiple times a day. That takes a hell of a lot of energy, and it doesn't produce very much. When you change around, when you change your views all the time, other people can't predict you. And then they call you fake, and they say that they're not really going to invest anything in what you're saying because it doesn't ride very long. It doesn't last long enough for them to put anything into it. So you get stuck into these relationships with other people that do that same thing, and other people do that to them, and then everybody just gets stuck believing what they were born believing, which is the simplest, most infantile belief system that you can have. And then it just never changes, because that's how people recognize you. And you get stuck in that, and you think that that's who you are, and you think that's the way the world is, and then you never question it. And I'm not talking about like racism and sexism and stupid shit like that, although that is part of it. Mostly it's just the general malaise of people that are stuck in these paradigms is, despite the fact that it's so comfortable, despite the fact that it's so efficient, it's highly inaccurate, and they are riddled with problems. They don't understand why all their relationships have all these problems in them. They don't understand how other people think. They don't understand how anybody that doesn't automatically agree with everything that they believe operate, so that they can only deal with a tiny, tiny fraction of the population. And that ends up making it so that they can't trust anyone that's outside their own group. And that's where you get the racism and the sexism and all the other stuff that we see so much prevalence of. It's a withdrawal socially. I don't trust any of these foreign people because I don't understand them and I can't predict them because they think things that make no sense to me, because my paradigm assumes things that theirs doesn't. And there's this conflict. And the emotion that I feel in those situations is fear. And so then the only thing that I can really do is just withdraw from them and avoid them. And that's what most people do. And those social circles are going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. People are less read now than they've ever been. They've read less books now than they've ever read. And the shows and the TV and the movies that they watch are narrower and narrower and narrower and baser and baser and baser, because that's what the TV is designed to do, is to find what is appealing to the greatest number of people. Well, that's always going to be the most simplistic, because if you try to get too complex or too sophisticated with it, it's going to go over too many people's heads. They're not going to go to the box office, and your movie's not making any money. So they'll say things that are really simple, and they'll say things that are really obnoxious and crude and don't require any kind of critical analysis. And that's why so many people nowadays don't use critical analysis. They just skip right over stuff. And again, this is all about emotions. And if you think about emotions like money, why would you invest in a product that you don't know anything about, that you don't need, and that other people around you aren't using, and that may or may not kill you and may or may not require a whole hell of a lot of training in order to use it properly? No one's going to buy that. Why would they bother buying that? They've got everything that they need to survive, and they know how to use all that stuff. Why would they add this new product on the line that may or may not require a hell of a lot of maintenance, and that they don't even know how to use it, and it's going to give them something that they don't even need? Why would they bother with it? And that's why people have the paradigms that they have, and that's why they get stuck thinking the things that they think and never changing them. So, ironically, the code is supposed to unfold your reference frame. So that's why it looks stupid and crazy and evil, because they're unfolding the reference frame. They're taking a position at the very peripheral, extreme limit edge of what someone believes is possible. They occupy that position and present that position to someone, and then they see how they react, and hopefully the person will think about it critically. Most of the time, they dismiss it and ignore it. Even I do that. And it's because I believe I already know where I'm going. I don't need to be distracted by this nonsense. I'm just going to keep going. Well, that's fine. Most of the time that is fine. But sometimes you got to sit down and think and be like, well, is that really the right path? Maybe there is something else that I should be focusing on. And Dr. Peterson brings this up sometimes. He calls it magic, a magical person, which changes your aim. It changes the path that you're going to travel on from here on in. And that's going to change your value structure, which really fundamentally changes who you are as a person. Because if everything that you do and think and say is derived from your emotions, and your emotions change, and your values change, which is why you have emotions, is it's a reaction to something in accordance with your values, or in discord with your values, giving you a dissonant emotion like hatred or fear. And if your values change, then your emotions change. If your emotions change, then everything else about you changes. So if your values change, then you change. And so it is magic. I mean, he's right on the money when he says that. When he says that something or someone that changes your values or changes your aim is magical because it will change you as a person. And that's scary to a lot of people because they've already invested so much of their time and energy into what they've already done that if they upend it now, well, they're looking at a sinking ship. They're looking at Titanic. I spent every dime that I have on this cruise, and lo and behold, it hits an iceberg and I drown and I die. I don't want to know that before I join it because I probably don't have anything else to live for. I don't have any other opportunities. So I just get right on the ship and ride it until it fucking drowns me. And that's how most people are. So, including myself. So, it takes somebody that already has everything that they need and feels secure and comfortable with everything that they've already got to be emotionally stable enough to be able to value something that's beyond what they already value. And that's also been taken away from us. The one thing that allows us the curiosity to expend the effort into the product that we don't really need is curiosity. And the only way that we're going to be curious enough about it to think that it might have some value or to be interested in what value it might have is if we already have all the things that we need and we feel secure in keeping them that way. Most of us right now don't. And it's weird and ironic because in the past we actually had more security than we do now. But because of the public school system and because of television and the media that we've been consuming and the complete lack of religious faith, we don't have security. We don't have trust in our fellow neighbors. Our cities are too big and too dense. There's too many people running around with too many ideas that you can't trust the person on the side of the street because there's way too much diversity. And that's not okay to say nowadays, but it's true. There's just too much diversity. Picture that there's an autistic kid, a psychopath, an empath, or somebody that thinks that they are, all in one group. They're not going to be able to function together. The autist is going to get taken advantage of by the psychopath and not ask for help because they're autistic. The psychopath is going to take advantage of the other two because that's what they do. They're psychopaths. And then the third person is just going to sit there and take it and try to be like, oh, well, aren't you just so, taken advantage of? Aren't you just so, cute and sweet? And let me just try to comfort you and all this stuff, only to be taken advantage of by the psychopath or be misunderstood by the autist who doesn't understand why they're doing this. They're not going to be able to cooperate. They're too diverse. But you throw a whole bunch of autists together and you get a technologically advanced civilization, albeit one that's emotionally reserved and doesn't really understand or deal well or value in social relationships, but still, they'll be able to work together from curiosity about, well, what do you know that I don't know? What could we build that we don't have yet? And they could feel secure with each other because they can trust and predict what the other person's going to do because they all share the same paradigms, or at least the basic world structure that the other person has. So what we have done in America that I think, anyway, this is my opinion, what we've done is we've turned a coping mechanism in something that's evolutionarily advantageous, and we've turned it into a plague. It's something that's actually destroying us because now we can't trust our neighbor, let alone somebody from the opposite pole of belief systems that we have. And yet we have to live right next to them. And that makes us feel insecure. And so then we withdraw and we become hateful or distrusting towards people that are outside of our circles. And that's going to get worse and worse and worse. And what I'm saying this in general, but most of the time you're only going to find this on the outskirts, like Charlie Kirk. Why did Charlie Kirk get shot? And would he have gotten shot in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s? No. And that's why you didn't see that. But now he does. Nowadays you do. And so that tells me that the people that do get into this thing where they try to find that security so that they can find other people that share their worldviews, unfortunately, they're getting smashed right next to people that have the exact opposite worldviews. You've got Antifa and the Proud Boys, or you've got rich people and poor people working in the same office building, or you've got Republicans and Democrats that can't see eye to eye but both have something that they have to weigh in on every 10 seconds. And so what ends up being what once was an evolutionarily advantageous thing to find your tribe and keep to your tribe has now become a survival mechanism that is also killing us. And so we're going to run into some kind of a problem. It's going to come to a head where if it's okay to kill Charlie Kirk, then maybe it's okay to kill Charlie Kirk's family. And maybe then it's okay to kill Charlie Kirk's friends. And then maybe it's okay to kill their friends and their family. And eventually it's just kill everybody. Or kill everybody that isn't a part of us. And that's the head that it's coming to. Like, if you look at Antifa, they're like that. If you're not like us, then you're worthless. And the opposite end of the spectrum, the Proud Boys, if they aren't already there, they're gonna get there. The people that will stick around the longest are the people that will be the most stalwart opposition to Antifa, will adopt Antifa's exclusionary practices and distrust and hate everyone but themselves or each other. And while that might work in the wild, while that might work with monkeys, it doesn't work in a civilized society with a whole bunch of people that have sophisticated or diverse paradigms. And that's going to end up destroying civilization. And then what we're going to have is not quite the destruction of civilization, to go back into the jungle. What we will have is a police state, authoritarian regime that tracks every single person and provides all the security that we should be providing with each other with simple trust. They will provide with coercion and brutal oppression. And that's how people will gain their security. And this is what happens in preparation for like a Nazi takeover or a red communist revolution. Those types of movements happen because people fear the unknown and they fear each other being, the general populace. There's something, they always believe that there's something wrong with the general population as it currently is. The Nazis believed that unless you hated the Jews and were, antagonistic towards them, that there was something wrong with you, that you were just a bitch, just sitting around letting the Jews take advantage of you and thus being involved in their takeover of the world or their oligarchy because you didn't do anything to stop it. And doesn't that sound familiar? It's the same thing that Antifa says. So you run the clock on that long enough and you let it go long enough, and eventually people will start saying that there's something wrong with the average person. And I even say that. So that just kind of distresses me. Like, if I'm saying it and I'm the one that's trying to blow the whistle on it and I'm the one doing the fucking thing, well, there's a goddamn problem right there. So, yeah, people will get to a point where they distrust or think that there's something wrong with the average person. And when that happens, when the average person distrusts the average person, then we run into a paradox and the house cannot stand. And so then we're going to all end up killing each other off and holing up into our own little groups that hate everyone except their own group, because the average person distrusts and hates the average person. And that's when you end up with Nazism and Stalinism and Maoism and all this stuff, is that if you believe that to just be normal, to just be a normal, average, everyday human being is wrong, and the only right way is your way, that's when you become so intolerant that you just can't stand anyone else. And the trade-off is, even though that sounds so antagonistic, why would anyone want to do that? Because it makes them feel secure, because they only have their one ruler. The only way that is right is this one way. So then to take an infinitude of possibilities and artificially crunch them all into one singularity massively reduces the amount of effort that you have to take to consider every single point. You don't have to consider anything. If there's only one right way, you could just dismiss everything except that way. If it's not that way, it's automatically wrong. I don't need to know anything else about it. I don't have to expend 10 years wondering and pondering and investigating and talking to people and sifting through evidence and advocating for the devil and blah, blah, blah. I don't have to do any of that stuff. All I have to do is just identify whether or not somebody belongs to a particular group, and then everything else about them is irrelevant, and then I can just dismiss or accept them based off that one metric alone. And the reason that people find that so attractive is because it simplifies their entire life. Everything that they think, say, and do can now be rooted back to that one metric. And they can now know that they're going to go to heaven, and they can know that the opposition is going to hell, and they can know all these things and be absolutely certain in those conclusions because they won't allow anything else on the table. It's kind of like, I'm going to win, I'm going to be the greatest basketball player that ever was by simply breaking the legs of anyone that does better than me. Well, now I know that I'm going to win. It's certain, because if anybody else was better than me, they'd have their legs broken. And now I don't have to worry. I can be very secure in my basketball playing ability, because it doesn't matter how good or bad I do. It matters what they're doing. And as long as they're crippled, I could be a shit player and it won't even matter. So it's very secure because I can't be deposed because I won't allow it. And that's where people end up. And I have ended up there. I'm still there. And other people are ending up there. And I hear it all over the place. So many people, pretty much everybody says that. It's like, well, everybody's asleep. Everybody's going to hell. Everybody's an idiot. Everybody's stupid. Everybody's crazy. Everybody's evil. And that can't really sustain itself for very long. There will be a day where people will say that, and they'll have a gun in their hand and they'll use it. And then you'll get Charlie Kirk and stuff like that happening. And you'll get the rise of Hitler, who says, I am here to give you the promised paradigm where everything revolves around this one thing. And if you don't belong into this one category, then you're evil. And if you do belong in this category, then you're automatically good. Even if you kill babies, it doesn't matter, because you're part of this group. And as long as you're part of the group, you're automatically good. And people will kill and rape and steal and lie and cheat in order to get that level of security, where it no longer matters what I think, say, and do. I cannot lose my security because I'm automatically a part of this group. And that's why racism, like the Nazi thing, was so tempting, because it's like, well, I'm already a race. I can't change my race, so I can't fail. I'm automatically a success in everything that I do because my skin color is the favored color. So it's all good in the neighborhood. I don't have to worry about anything because I'm already a part of the correct race, or whatever it is. That's what made that so tempting. And then with the Stalin movement, it was a little bit more sophisticated, where it's like, well, as long as I'm poor and I believe in helping other people, then I'm good. But, the day that I ever become rich, or, it's not even that, because there were rich communists. It's the loyalty to the party. And what even is that? That one, I think in many ways the Stalinist movement was a hell of a lot scarier than the Nazi regime, because the Nazis were almost laughably stupid. It's like, do you really think that the entire world is so simple that you can divide it into two races, us and everyone else? But they did, and that's how they went. But the Stalinists were a hell of a lot scarier, in my opinion, because it was so much more amorphous. It was like, well, if you're loyal to the party, then you're a good person, and you can kill other people and it doesn't matter, and you can lie to other people and it doesn't matter, and you can steal from them, it doesn't matter. You can censor them, it doesn't matter. You can break a baby's hand right in your fist just because you feel like it, but as long as you're loyal to the party, it doesn't matter. And what does loyalty to the party mean? It just means what other people think. It's like, if other people accept you, then you're in. And if other people don't accept you, then you're out. And that's what made it so much more scary, in my opinion, is you're never going to get the security that the Nazis had, because the Nazis were stupid enough to go, herpy-derp, your skin's white, you're good. But if you're on the Stalinist side, it's a hell of a lot different. It's like, well, if you sneeze at the wrong time, you might be subversive. It doesn't matter if you spent 20 years of your life serving the party. You could get killed tomorrow. over some stupid bullshit. You spilled the coffee on the leader's lap, you're dead. You you didn't get the quota completed, you're dead. You didn't do what the leader told you to do, you're dead. You didn't pick up the phone fast enough, you're dead. It doesn't matter. And so they don't ever get the security that they're trying to get. And, at least the Nazis could sit back and relax sometimes, because it'd be like, well, I'm just going to bask in my white skin over here that doesn't ever fade with time, doesn't ever get suspicion, isn't ever the point of suspicion for someone else. So I can just keep my security and hold on to it forever. That's what you're going to see in the future here in America. You're going to see, of course, Antifa, who are the actual fascists that they think that they're fighting. And they're so fucking stupid that, just like the Nazis, herp-de-derp, are you wearing a mask and wearing all black and saying that, that I should be allowed to murder my own baby because something about a uterus? Oh, okay, well then you're one of us, herp-de-derp. Welcome to the party. They don't know. They don't do any research. They can't figure anything out. They're fucking retarded. The only thing that those people are good for is throwing Molotov cocktails and getting killed. They're cannon fodder. And it's obvious that they were invented. No one in their right mind would ever organically come to the conclusion that everyone in the entire world except myself is a Nazi, just because I don't understand who those people are. They have to be retarded. You have to be really fucking stupid to be an Antifa member. I mean, to be like, well, I'm against fascism, so I'm going to use actual fascism against people who don't use actual fascism, and then claim that I'm anti-fascist, because all I know is fascism equals bad and I equal good. And so then therefore I can't be a fascist because I'm a good guy and fascists are bad people. It reminds me of the Nazis. It's so stupid that if it weren't violent, it would be laughable. Imagine this. Imagine Antifa with no bike locks, no violent acts or anything. They're just, maybe they're just like screaming or something with their stupid little signs. Everyone would laugh at these fucking people. The only reason that they're taken seriously at all is because, ironically, of fascism. If they weren't fascist, no one would take them seriously. If they weren't willing to bash your head in with a bike lock just because you looked at them wrong, then no one would take them seriously. They'd get laughed off the street. But that's why I think they're going to be so prevalent in the future, because they represent the stupidest of the stupid, the lowest of the low, the least aware of the least aware, and they don't want to be aware. That's the thing that defines Antifa, is I will not consume, I refuse all media, all information that I don't already have at my disposal. If I don't already know it and I don't already believe that way, then I just refuse everything else. And the only thing that I accept is a reiteration of what I already believe. That's as stupid as you can get, because you can't learn like that. All you can do is just sit in an echo chamber and listen to your own thoughts repeated back to you over and over and over, and that's it. And that's as far as you can possibly get. So the Antifa crowd represents the lowest of the possible low. You can't get any lower, and so the more people that drop down to that level, the longer they're going to stay there, because they'll never be able to get out of it. You can't get into Antifa and then get out of it unless you're exposed to something that will wake you up, or unless you wake up one day and you realize, I don't want to beat people up with a bike lock just because they look at me wrong. I want to know who that person actually is and get some curiosity about you. If you get into a panic, if you get into an emotional panic, then you're just going to stay in Antifa forever. You'll never be able to escape it. Because the thing that keeps people in it, in my opinion, is fear. They fear that there's, civil rights being hurt everywhere, and they want to be the hero and save, everybody from that. Because nobody wakes up and wants to be evil. They think that they're doing something good. Well, I'm fighting Nazis. Yeah, you sure you are, little Jimmy. Yeah, when everybody accepts you as a Nazi, that must be really difficult. Yeah, yanking on little Susie's hair and calling her a Nazi doesn't make you a hero, little Jimmy. Sorry. So it's just the lowest that you could possibly get, and in my opinion. Now, maybe I'm wrong about everything that I've said. Maybe I just don't know. But that's what I've seen, and that's what I feel like. And so for me, there's absolutely no incentive on getting associated with Antifa. So I'm going to do what Antifa does and just dismiss everything that I don't like, pretend it has no value, and then just reiterate my own belief structure in the face of the unknown. So what it is it's a mad grab for security and power and nothing else. And it's a desperate, panic-driven thing to do. If you're by the time that someone resorts to violence and they don't even have the ability to tolerate another person's opinion, then we're lost. There's no more room for learning. There's no more room for debate. Then there's only room for action and reaction. It's like a bird or an animal. They hear a loud shot fired, they run immediately. Action, reaction. There's no thought. It's just impulse. Gut instinct impulse takes over, and that's all that there is. And like I said, if you get stuck into a gut instinct action reaction mentality, it's really difficult to get out of that because it enforces itself. And not only does it enforce it itself inside your own head, but other people will enforce it onto you from outside your own head too. And if that ever gets to a place where it ends up being an organized mob, it might actually be able to succeed, which is why they don't. And the people that invented Antifa, which I'm blaming Soros and the rest of those Illuminati Charles people for, they deliberately designed Antifa to fail. They are cannon fodder. The only reason that Antifa exists is so that the government will have a reason to send the military into domestic territories. And while Trump may feel like his move was good, and it may have been that time, unfortunately, he opened a door that can't be shut. Now that people have learned to accept that the military will occupy domestic cities, then they're going to accept it more often. And the troops are going to get sent to areas at every single beck and call. Somebody throws a Molotov cocktail, send in the military. Somebody has a sign that says they're going to throw a Molotov cocktail, send in the military. Somebody said that somebody else might put a sign up that says they might throw a Molotov cocktail, send in the military. And eventually the military will just sit there inside the cities. And then we've got a police state. And that's what Antifa is for. Antifa is there to justify the police state that's coming. Because as long as they're there, then there has to be a police involvement because they're too stupid to know any better. And they're too insecure to be curious enough to find out that they're wrong. So they can't learn and they can't tolerate anything. The only thing they can do is get put into jail and be used as an excuse to say that, oh, well, people's rights are being violated. And, they might even get used as cannon fodder to justify the abuse of people's civil rights. Because it'll be like, well, what do you want to deal with? You want to deal with anarchists like Antifa who just bash your skull in just for looking at them wrong because they're too fucking stupid to know any better? Or do you want to deal with at least some structure and some order that you can feel at least a little bit of security with because you can predict it a little bit with the police, who will put you into handcuffs at the blink of an eye at the moment that you deviate outside the line of what they consider to be civil disobedience. And the other thing that's wrong with America is that all of our laws are arbitrarily given. None of them are operationally defined. There's no scientific way of determining whether or not somebody even committed a crime to begin with because there's no scientific definition of what a crime is. It's like, well, you violated someone's rights because you didn't let them murder their own baby. Well, you violated their rights because you murdered your own baby. Well, you violated someone's rights because you brought this conversation up and it hurt my feelings and I didn't even have a baby. So it's irrelevant to me, and so now I'm being harassed. So now my civil rights are being violated. What does that even mean to violate someone's civil rights? No one knows. No one has ever known what that means because it's never been operationally defined. It's never been objectively measured. It's just laying out there in the middle of the street some weird mantra that people pick up randomly, and it's funny because you'll have BLM pick that up, you'll have Antifa pick that up, you'll have Nazis pick that up, You'll have you'll have Republicans pick that up, you'll have Democrats pick that up, and everybody's picking it up, but nobody is recognizing that they're all holding onto the same tapestry and they're ripping it apart. And it's like, yeah, if you think that everybody has these civil rights being violated, can you define why you think that? And then that will help us, narrow it down. Okay, so this group over here has these civil rights that are defined in this way. And those people over there have their civil rights that are defined in that way. And then we all have our own pockets. But America doesn't like pockets. America likes what it calls, quote unquote, a melting pot, which is a stupid mess. It's a hot mess. You've got people that are on the street that have nothing at all to do with each other, but they have to live right next to each other. And that's dangerous, especially in a society where people don't value critical analysis. They value gut instinct, fast reaction, speed. And they also value oppressive, antagonistic, bombastic, hateful antagonism and accusations. That goes viral. Saying peace and love and let's all understand each other, that doesn't make it onto the front page news. Saying I hate all X, that makes it on the front page news. That's what people get exposed to. That's the media and the information that they're dealing with on an everyday basis. And what's it all leading up to? A New World Order takeover. And Antifa is ripe for the picking. They are exactly the useful idiots that the deep state needs in order to take over America and put us into a police state, martial law enforced state. And we're not the only ones over here in America. It's going to happen in Europe. It's going to happen in every developed nation on earth. And eventually the deep state is going to reveal itself, and God be with us on that day, because they've never done it before. The deep state has never revealed itself before. If they ever do, it's because they believe that they've already won. They believe they've already got us all. They've got the rich because they are against the poor. They've got the poor because they're against the rich. They've got the blacks because they're against the whites, and they've got the whites because they're against the blacks. And if you're against any of these groups, then you're gonna go down with the rest of the groups. And that's the real secret. The only real way to make it past all this stuff is to not fall into that trap of hating and distrusting other people and getting the fuck out of Dodge as fast as possible, and then grouping together with other people who also, like you, don't want to judge or attack other people. That's the only way to ever make it through, is to make our own uprising that's actually real and genuine and organic and grassroots and from the bottom up. That's the only way that we're ever going to make it out of this. So I've just now decided, and so you can have full faith and trust in me, because I just randomly now decided I'm no longer going to do the Shadow Man thing. I was going, here's my secret master plan. Because I'm an evil Nazi and I'm going to kill you unless you believe the same things that I do, and you know that that's true because I just fucking said it. Oh, see? Oh my God. So that'll get rid of all the fucking retards that don't belong over here. The rest of you that are still with me, I have a plan. I'm going to get a constitution written. This is the most important thing, not the money, although I do need money, because you can't do anything without money. You do need money. But the most important thing is that I build this damn torch so that even if I die, I can pass it on to somebody else in my dying breath. Here you go. You take it forward since I failed, and somebody else can run with this torch. And the torch is, we need a self-sufficient society that's built on trust and security and does not antagonize or intervene on anyone else's shit. It's real simple. It's mind your own and find your own. And so, it's like as long as I'm not up in arms against anyone, then I can't be on the wrong side of history. That's how I take it. If I'm not killing anyone, then I can't be a murderer. If I'm not violating anyone's rights, then I can't be a Nazi. If I'm not censoring anybody's freedom of speech, then I can't be a Stalinist asshat. These are the things. These are the civil liberties. Now, in order to objectively define what is and is not a civil liberty, I have actually boiled it all down to one law that I think makes a lot of sense. And so, again, here's my one law. Everybody likes these. Well, here's mine. The law of consent. You cannot impose your will upon anyone else. And the way that that's objectively measured is everybody always has the same three choices at all times. They never lose these three choices. Is they get to stop whatever act it is that they could be involved in, but they cannot stop someone else who wishes to be involved in that act. But they can always stop themselves from interacting or engaging in some act, and it becomes avoidable. This is the number one reason that people say that dictatorships are evil, is because you can't avoid them. You can't avoid the situation from happening. There is no way of avoiding Stalin's wrath because everybody's on the menu, because there's no way of objectively determining and thus avoiding being on the menu. And and it's the same thing with any dictatorship. Even the Nazis would kill white people if they harbored a fugitive. If they were keeping Anne Frank in the attic, they're going to get shot, even if they are white, because now, they've broken the party rule. That was their one rule, is kill all the Jews. Well, my one rule is give everybody three choices. They get to stop any interaction that they're engaged in or would be engaged in. So you have to ask someone, do you want to do this, whatever it is? And then they have to accept it. And at any time, before, during, and after the act, they should be able to stop any further engagement in the future. I don't want to talk to you anymore, and not get harassed because of it. I just want to stop, and that's it. They should always have that option. They should also be given the ability to start whatever action that they want, interaction that they want. That means that, yes, a dude can catcall a chick one time. If she stops him and says, nope, I'm not interested, he cannot pursue her, because that means that she can't avoid the interaction. As soon as she can't stop the interaction from happening by saying, no, I'm not interested, then there's a problem. But there's not a problem if he just says, hey, baby, you look delicious, or something like that. As long as he doesn't grope her, he can say whatever he wants. I wish you'd pee on my face and I would drink it. He can say this. He can start any interaction that he so damn well chooses. And yes, she is going to have to deal with that one time per person forever. If Joe remarks to Sally, hey baby, nice legs, and Sally says, fuck you, I'm not interested in your skis ball ass, both of them are in the right. The next day, if Joe says, hey Sally, nice legs, then Sally can file a suit against Joe for sexual harassment because he didn't let her avoid the interaction. She's already made it objectively known that she doesn't want to engage. Now, before she did that, Joe was in the right because Joe had no objective way of measuring what her consent was. He didn't know if she was interested or not. So he's able to take advantage of the unknown and say, well, she could be interested. Maybe she wants me to say this to her. But as soon as she says no, one time, he's barred from doing it. Until or unless Sally revokes that, and it is within her right to start a new interaction and say, hey, Joe, nice legs. The next day, because he listened, maybe she changed her mind. Well, now I feel more secure with Joe because Joe didn't catcall me the second day. And so on the third day, Sally goes up to Joe and reverses it and says, and catcalls Joe. And she's allowed to do that. And then if Joe says, oh, okay, great, let's do it, baby. Let's go back to your place. They can. And if Joe feels uncomfortable and thinks that Sally is just making fun of him, then he can say, no, I'm not interested in, and I don't want to hear this kind of rhetoric from you again, Sally. And then on the fourth day, if Sally says, hey, Joe, nice legs, then now Sally's in the wrong. Because Joe has the same rights that Sally does. Doesn't matter if he has tits or not. Everybody gets the same rights. Now, the last one is sustaining. So they have the right to start it as long as no one has said anything up front. Now, you can have a sign on your door that says no solicitors. Okay, you stopped all the solicitors. They're barred before they ever even attempt. You've already got the sign. You can wear a shirt. You can have a little badge. You can wear a little armband. You can put something on you that, as long as it gets officially documented by the police to know that that's what that means for everyone, not just you, but for everyone, this badge means you don't catcall me ever. Okay, well then just wear that, and then everyone will know. And then if Joe does it even the very first time, he's in the wrong, because her badge was visible, everybody could see it, and he still chose to go against that. In the same way that a pushy salesman knocks on some door that says no solicitors. Oh, I'm sorry, I just didn't see that. No, bullshit, fuck you. It was visible. So that's how that would work. Now, for sustaining, the sustaining of the act means that everybody that's involved in the act has to be able to complete the act without the aid of someone else, that they're able to complete it. Or at the very least, if you can't measure whether or not the act is completed, let's say it's sexual, for example, what is a complete sexual act? No one really knows. And if you say it's an orgasm, which is what I used to think it was, well, then there's problems with that, because then if you don't orgasm, then you cause a crime to happen. So you can't do that. So instead of measuring whether or not the person is able to complete it, they are simply assumed to be able to complete it unless it's disproven by them stopping the act somewhere during it. So what that means is an act is sustained as long as it isn't stopped. If Sally doesn't say no, doesn't run away, doesn't call her friend or text somebody or call the police, if she doesn't struggle or resist or have any verbal way of telling or objectively measuring that she's not interested, she cannot become mattress girl and later, years later, come back and say, no, you know what, I was actually raped. No, Sally, you have to resist in the act. And this is something that so many feminazis will get on my ass about. I don't give a shit. You have to have an objective way of determining whether or not someone consented. Sorry, you can't save them all. There has to be some risk inherent in every interaction. You cannot absolutely eradicate all risk. You can't absolutely eradicate all possibilities of any bad thing ever happening to some person somewhere. You can mitigate it, but you have to be reasonable about that. You have to allow some error, some room for error. So what that is you have to have some objectively measurable dissent during the act. You can say no, you can say stop, you can say help, you can say rape, you can try to leave, you can physically attempt to leave the room. If they grab you while you're trying to run away, that's an objective way of measuring that the person didn't consent. However, if you want to do some weird shit, some edge play, and you want to pretend that you're being raped, because some people get into this, okay, yeah, you can do that. And again, you either need to wear that badge proudly and visibly at all times to say, yeah, I'm easy pickings, you can do it to me, and I won't, I hereby, waive my civil right to stop any interaction. I don't want to stop any interaction. I want someone to force me into the interaction. Wear that badge, and then everyone will know where you stand on that. Or you can make a particular social contract with another person and say, I like this and I don't like that, and if you do that thing that I don't like, then it becomes a crime. And that's what makes it edgy. That's what makes it, risky, is you're risking committing a crime because you're so precise that you're not going to go over that line, or you're so compassionate that you wouldn't even dream of violating that. Something like that. And that could be romantic. It could be fun. It could be thrilling. I'm not going to bar people from being able to enjoy that kind of risky behavior if they want to engage in it, but they have to be safe. Wear your badge, write your contract, put something out there. You can even put in a silent alarm. If I don't call you in the next 2 hours, call the cops because somebody has tied me up and killed me or raped me or prevented me from using my phone, something like that. Use a safe word. There's all kinds of things that you can do to mitigate the risk on those risky behaviors. If you want to engage in them, then you need to know how to do all that stuff too. And you'd have to go through some kind of a class and at least be exposed to the information before you decide to wear that badge or write that contract or engage in that risky behavior. And you get licensed for it. You can have that license revoked. So now, if you want to be a dominatrix, okay, you can get a license for that. You can get your little badge that says, yes, I am a dominatrix and I can legally do whatever the fuck I want. I can even violate somebody's safe word because that's the type of dominatrix that I am. But the moment that you do that and then the victim runs off and says, yeah, they raped me and I don't want anything to deal with them, then there's a problem. And that's, again, objectively measurable because you can measure somebody's consent before the act because they either will initiate it, that's automatically consent. If I ask you to do something with me, then I'm consenting to it. So you can consent before the act, you can consent during the act, and you can consent after the act. And you have to have 2 out of the 3 of those. You can get seduced by not consenting before, but then you consent during and after, and that's seduction. It's perfectly fine, but it's very risky. And so all of these rules, they all come back to the same thing. You get to start, stop, and sustain any interaction that you wish, regardless. That's the only law there is, the end. And that's where I'm running with it. It makes having homosexual sex perfectly fine. It makes S&M sex perfectly legal and safe. And it makes it sane also. There's reason behind it. Yes, the act is inherently unreasonable, that's what makes it thrilling. But there are reasonable safeguards that are put into place that kind of balance out that unreasonableness with an extra added precaution of reason, with a badge, contract, silent alarm, safe word, etc., whatever you want, a combination of all those things at the same time, whatever you want to do that mitigates that risk. And you definitely need to have classes that authorize people to engage in these activities before they do them, and those classes have to be revoked or added at the whim of the peer group who engages in those acts. Not by everybody else, not by the popular vote, not by a Democratic vote, by their peers who actively engage in that act or have in the past and can prove it and have objective evidence, recordings, something like that, that prove that, yes, objectively, we know that this person has committed this act, therefore they are considered, maybe not an expert, but they are considered qualified to be able to determine whether or not something is or is not reasonable. And that means that the S&M community becomes its own community that secures itself. It no longer gets antagonized by police who don't know any better, and it no longer has fussy vanilla people that don't know what they're doing and trying to save people that don't need to be saved, or giving people really bad advice, etc., or misunderstanding things. And it lets the community be its own community. And then the rest of all the little nitty-gritty details, the only thing that we need to focus on with the details is at any time were they unable to stop the interaction. If they weren't able to stop it before the act, were they at least able to stop it during and after the act? If they weren't able to stop it during the act, were they at least able to stop it after and before the act? That's how you can consent to being tied up. You consent before being tied up because you're not currently tied up. You're free to leave. You're free to say, I don't want to do this. And then you still say, yes, I do want to do that. You consented before. And then you still have to consent afterwards. So let's say that Sally consents to being tied up by Joe before they ever do anything. Okay, so now you've objectively established that you consent. Here's the text message to Joe. Yes, Joe, you can tie me up. Send. Okay, objective, proven consent before the act. During the act, obviously she can't consent because she's being tied up, so she can't stop herself from being tied up if she's already tied up. That's the point of being tied up. Then she must consent afterwards. Now, this is the problem, and it sucks, but if Sally gets tied up by Joe, even though she consented beforehand, if she ceases to consent after the act is completed, then it becomes a crime. And the way that that's protecting Joe is they will create, or should create, a social contract which says as long as Joe doesn't do X, Y, and Z while Sally's tied up, then Sally can't revoke her consent. And they agree on that. And they say, okay, I am, or they are waiving their right to revoke their consent after the fact as long as X, Y, and Z don't get committed. If they do get committed, it's an automatic crime. If they don't get committed, it's automatically not a crime. And then that's how that goes through. And you can do that not just, I use tying people up as an example because everybody knows what that is. And everybody knows the inherent risks of it. It's a great example. But you can apply it to anything. You can apply it to literally anything. If you want to have sex with an animal, as long as they didn't leave, then I guess they liked it. And I call it the Rollo defense. If she didn't like it, she would have gotten out of the way. Oh no, we caught R. Kelly peeing on some 12-year-old chick. Well, if she didn't like it, she would have just gotten out of the way. And I agree with Rollo. If she doesn't like it, she'll just get out of the way. If she doesn't want it, she just won't go there. You know, it's that simple. She can avoid it. As long as she can avoid it, then she's okay. If she can't avoid it, that's a problem right off the bat. But as long as she can avoid it, then I don't care. I don't care. You want to be a 12-year-old girl and get peed on by R. Kelly? I don't care. As long as you can get out of the way. I'll try to sell that on the street and see how many people buy it. But that's the movement that I want to start. I want to start a movement which is the 3 choices law. You always get the choices to start, stop, and sustain any interaction that you could possibly imagine doing, even if it's killing someone. You want to kill someone? Okay, you can be a gladiator. You can consent to killing someone. You can consent to being killed by being a gladiator, by playing Russian roulette. You can do that. It's consensual because you can start it, you can stop it, and you can sustain it, as long as the act is going. So with Russian roulette, you can consent before it because you know where that thing is. You know what it is. You have to pick up the gun. Okay, so you consented before it, and you consented during it. And so it doesn't matter if you die and can't consent after the fact. You already consented before and during the act, and so what you do after it doesn't matter anymore. And that's really the name of the game. That's the security that we all really need. Is I need to know that if I consented before and during an act, that I can't revoke my consent after the fact. That's called buyer's remorse. If I go to the store and some salesperson sells me an item, and I consent before buying the item, yeah, that item sounds okay. And then I consent during the sale of the item, okay, here's the money, give me the item. And then I later revoke my consent by coming back to the store and saying, you know what, I really don't like this item. Yeah, it does everything that you said it does. Yeah, it doesn't do anything that you didn't say it did. There is no real objective crime that's been committed here. I just simply subjectively don't prefer using this item anymore. Its quality is less than acceptable and satisfactory to me. And the salesperson is not at fault and did not commit a crime by selling that item to that person. That person is simply experiencing buyer's remorse. And so it like I said, applies to even economic engagements. It applies to everything. You can cold call someone because they didn't consent before, but if they don't consent during the act, you drop it. You have to drop it right there. You can't sustain the interaction despite them trying to stop it. If they say, no, don't call here again, and then you do it again, that's harassment. And the only way that in America that you can do that is you have to successively keep putting your name on these don't call lists and stuff like that, and it still doesn't work all the time. If you change your number, you have to do it again and all this stuff. So people already have some of this going on. It's just not done objectively enough, and it's not done reasonably enough, and it's not done maximally enough. So, to this day, no one knows what sexual harassment really is. Oh, it's when a dude looks at a chick and the chick doesn't like it. Now there's no more security because I can't control what a chick thinks when I'm looking at her. I can't even control whether or not I look at her. What if I get surprised because she happens to pop up in the hallway and I didn't expect her? I'm going to just instinctively look to see who she is, to see if she's a threat, because I didn't expect her to be there. Who is this person? I need to assess them. Well, she thinks that I'm, trying to rape her from, looking at her or something like that, and files a sexual harassment lawsuit against me, and I don't have any defense because I have a dick, so I'm automatically in the wrong. And she has tits, she's automatically in the right. That's the problem with the way that it's being done right now, is there's not really an objective way of determining whether or not something is sexual harassment. I have put forth a way of actually determining whether or not something is sexual harassment. So that is a crash course, very dirty, very messy way of talking about why this movement is necessary, what this movement is, and my official now declaration of intent. I intend on seceding from America. Fuck you, America. I see where you're going. I am not going to sit here. If I have to, I will build a little raft and go to some other fucking country. I will not die on American soil. That's my intent. In addition to that, I'd like to bring as many people who agree with me about there only really needs to be these three choices, as long as those three choices always exist and never get taken away from someone. Unless they impose it on someone else, then they lose that right to choose because they've abused it. So again, like with the Joe and Sally example, if Joe sexually harasses Sally by catcalling her 2 days or twice in a row after she's already told him, no, stop, I don't want to hear that, or if she wore some pink fucking ribbon on her thing and that's officially been declared and Joe knows what that means and he still encroaches on it, catcalls on her anyway, then he has abused his choices because he has now used his choices to take away someone else's choices without that other person having done anything wrong, having taken any choices away from someone else. This is what indemnifies the police so that they're able to arrest people, because you might be wondering, well, if everybody always gets three choices, then the criminal doesn't consent to being handcuffed. They've already consented to being handcuffed because they knew that if they took someone else's consent away, if they took someone else's choices away, they don't have any choices to continue to remain doing whatever it is that they do. They have to get picked up and put into a behavioral rehabilitation program. So, and that is not a prison. That's a video for another day about the problem with the prison system and rape being part of the sentencing process, which I find absolutely disgusting. The fact that people are racially segregated in American prisons. The American prison system is the most atrocious institution that I've ever seen in my life. And I've never gone there, okay, but within my own lifetime, excluding Nazi, not gulags, concentration camps, although I don't really know what the difference is between a gulag and a concentration camp. And the American prison isn't much better than a concentration camp or a gulag. The only difference is that the prisoners are kept sitting there doing nothing instead of being forced to labor, but it's just, the civil rights are just absolutely atrocious. Now, given that you can't take away anyone else's choices, or else your choices get taken away by the police, not some random mob, but by the police. Then, and there's a license for that too. If you wanted to be part of the police, I believe in a decentralized police force. I think that anybody and everybody that passes the bar, passes the police qualification, if you know the law, if you know how to apply the law, and you've proven it going through a training course, then I think that you should be allowed to commit an arrest. And if you haven't gone through that, then I don't think you should be allowed to commit an arrest, because you don't know what you're doing. And that's how I get rid of the vigilantes, while at the same time making sure that the police don't end up becoming corrupt themselves, which often happens. But as long as it's decentralized, then I don't believe it can happen, because the vast population, if anybody can just join the police force whenever they want, and anybody can police whatever grounds they want to police, then they can. and they will. And so that will fix that. But that's another video for another day. Like I said, the police and the prison system needs a complete upending. But for right now, I'm just declaring my statement of intent to no one at the present moment, because I'm a fucking loser and a recluse, and I say a whole bunch of crazy, bombastic, schizophrenic nightmare shit, and that's why no one listens to me. But in the future, this will be used against me only, and people will find all kinds of things wrong with you. He's so evil because of all the stuff he said, that you could kill people just by the color of their skin, even though obviously that wasn't my intent. That was just something that I was using as an example of what Nazism is, but you know how that goes. So that's why I'm saying this, is so I can ground myself. This is my intent. I will not die on American soil, and I will bring people, at least 4 other people that agree with the 3 choices law, and I will bring them with me, and we will create a new society that is self-sufficient and doesn't depend on anyone else, so that we can continue to function according to our 3 choices law into infinity, forever. And just plant our flag in the ground or water or wherever we end up, and say, this is who we are, and we're not changing, and you can't change us. And as long as anyone agrees with us, then our arms are wide open to you. You can come on over anytime you damn well please. And hopefully there will be lots of that. Hopefully there will be, if I work on not being so fucking annoying and crazy and stupid and evil, then maybe I can get some more people to agree with me, and we can all have a Merry Christmas one day. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Hallelujah.